you said something that I think we're a little bit dense to here in Minnesota in the United States, that this is an internationalist movement that seeks to erase borders and identity
Mhm.
and to reprogram people into a different way of thinking, which is completely novel and overturns 100,000 years of human evolution. So, it's this is where we're going to come back to in reference to the MAGA movement, to Minnesota politics, national politics, and how these religious and political issues are so potent right now and could
Yeah.
pose a real great threat to the continuation of reestablishing the Republic of the United States. But I want to hear how it is that you were born in 69,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And you were born into this really pretty well developed now godless environment.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
went to a, I would probably
Government
presume,
school.
government school
Absolutely.
where
Yep.
that was pounded into you.
Totally. Yes. Yes. Now here's the thing though. So both sides of my family were farmers, right? My great grandfather on my mom's side was actually a veteran from the Balkan War, and he got a pension, and so he bought some land. And on my dad's side, also they were all farmers. And when communism came, anyone who had land, it was basically taken from them. They had to sign it off. My great grandfather, who impacted me a lot, I remember him vividly. We would go and he would point to these fields around the city. Every summer we would go to the village, right? And great grandfather would point to these fields, and I just would never forget the look in his eyes, and he would say, "These are our lands. They were never no somebody else's lands. This is our lands, right?" And they took them all, right? So we suffered the theft at gunpoint from, like, basically, and they pushed people into the cities. Like, my parents were from growing up in these, farmer families, they had to go to the city. And when they brought people to the city, my parents were both doctors, right? So I was raised in a family of two doctors, and net politics was never discussed. Communism was never discussed. Um, it was a basically, we don't know what's going on. We're pretending like life is normal. Except one time I walked in on my dad listening to Radio Free Europe, right? And they were freaking out. Like, "Hey, don't tell anybody," right? I must have been like 12 years old. So I realized something is going on, something that no one wants to talk about. And the overwhelming sense of fear that is like a blanket that is cast over the entire culture and over everyday life, literally is tangible. It's very real. And the fact that people would disappear, everyone knew people were disappearing who would tend to voice their criticism of the regime. And so, and I'm growing up as a teenager, I'm like, I'm not going to live like this. I just made a vow to myself. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to keep asking questions. And I mean, if I die, if they shoot me or disappear me, that's fine. I want to know the truth. So I started asking questions. I started, reading in the library. I found some books by Blaise Pascal, who is a French philosopher, and he wrote about God in a very, like, it was a real thing. So now, as a scientist and a philosopher who's writing about God in a very real way, that was my first interaction with Christian, thinking, right? And so this impacted me deeply. And I went to the Orthodox Church and I baptized myself. I mean, not myself. I asked to be baptized when I was a teenager because I just had a really, deep pursuit of wanting to know the truth. Why are we here? I'm looking at the stars and who made this? Who made all this? I have these questions, and they do not want you asking these questions. The school doesn't want to ask you these questions. Everybody's just like, we came from the apes. Evolution has pushed really hard in communist countries, right? And so, during all these years, basically to have any kind of interest, whether it was American rock music or the Bible, it was equally threatening to the regime, right? And I had interest in both, right? Both American culture. American culture was a form of dissidency, like you were against the communist regime, if you
Blue
were.
jeans.
But yeah, blue jeans, long hair, all of that. So that was a big thing. But at a deeper level, I just had this like internal dissatisfaction with, like, seeing my parents go to work every day, trying to be quiet, trying to survive, trying to take care of their kids and me and my brother. And so I was like, I'm not going to live like this. I just decided. They want to disappear me, that's fine, but I'm going to keep asking questions. And that's what led me to the faith, really. I connected with an underground Pentecostal church at the time. And
Underground.
yeah, they were not legal. So they told me,
And when you
hey,
say Pentecostal,
yeah,
not everybody knows what that is.
yeah, there's a branch of Christianity that believes in the charismatic expression of the Holy Spirit and all that, supernatural healings and things like this. But to me, what was more important is that they were not official. And I thought, if they are not official, that means that they gotta, if
They're
there's a
good.
there, that's good because everything official is corrupt and can't trust it. And even the Orthodox Church, I remember my interactions with the priests. I realized how hollow they were. Like I'm searching for truth, but they were just totally void of substance. Right? There's nothing there to bring me to the faith. Right? So I started going to this disallowed church or illegal church. And that's how I came to know the Lord. And then I began to preach on the street after the regime collapsed. And there was freedom. You can go out on the
And
street
what year
now.
was that for
That was
Bulgaria?
'89. This was shortly
Same
after the
time.
'89, shortly after Ceausescu got shot, and around that same period of time. And basically, it was chaos. After that, the best way to describe it was just controlled chaos. Because the structures just disintegrated, and that gave me an opportunity to go out and start sharing my convictions. And so, talking about street preaching, I started preaching all over the city. I opened up my apartment, and mostly young people started just coming to the Lord, asking questions, and that's how my church was founded. I became a founder of a church. Actually, we grew very fast from zero in 1990 to over 1,000 people in like 3.5 years. And so it was just incredible spiritual hunger during that time. And whoever had the goods and offered it, like if you were actually on the street corner preaching, I've had over 200 people just stand there and listen for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, okay, we're done. They're like, no, we want more. I mean, this was happening all the time during like a period of like maybe a couple of years, right? And so I sensed like this is the time to do it. And so that's what I did. I graduated clinical lab school, so I was working a job, but I was going and preaching on the street.
Can we bookmark that one spot? Just I wanna
Sure.
just say
Yeah,
something.
absolutely.
Okay, so politically, here's something politically everybody can think about doing because on this podcast,
Yeah.
we're about political activism and
Hmm.
getting people involved in American politics. So I wanna just comment on and I know you're gonna agree with me. People underestimate who the communists are in our American culture and what they will do if they get control of the political levers of power. They will kill their
Yes.
opponents because it's been the same, and it won't happen here. That's been said in a lot of countries.
Yeah.
And every time the communists get control, they basically ethnically cleanse
Yeah, absolutely.
those they cannot convert.
Yeah,
It's convert or
violence
die.
violence was, advocated by Karl Marx at the very inception of his whole movement and ideology. As you know, he was a newspaper publisher, and they shut him down because of his radical ideas, and he vowed to, execute vengeance on his enemies. Violence, he was, as Marx was born in a Lutheran family, even though Jewish by descent. His father was a wealthy lawyer, and in his youth, he was, writing poems to Christ. I mean, Marx was a Lutheran kid writing poems to Christ. This is a historic fact, right? Then he goes to university, and a couple of years later, he starts to write poems to Lucifer. So you tell me what converted him. It wasn't Judaism, it wasn't his Jewish faith, it was the liberal, secular ideas that were pushed at his time. And he becomes a Lucifer poem writing, anarchist, basically, incredibly chaotic person, and his life is just really interesting to read. But violence was an integral part of his entire philosophy. And even Hayek, for example, Friedrich Hayek, in his book The Road to Serfdom, he writes about how Marx was predicting that communism will take off in Britain, for example. And then they came to him and they said, well, no, the workers are happy, their wages are growing, and nobody wants to go to war with the capitalists, and he said, oh, they'll have to. They'll have to. It doesn't matter what's happening on the facts didn't matter. What mattered was this dialectic ideology. Destroy everything so we can rebuild a utopia. And that basically is what globalists today, they spin and they push to young people. What we have now is bad. So let's destroy it. Let's destroy the historical monuments. Let's destroy the past. Let's demonize the past. And now we're going to rebuild a really nice utopia for you.